Welcome in to Bears Weekly, powered by IGS Energy, a Chicago Bears network production. Bears Weekly is brought to you by Advocate Healthcare, Athletico Physical Therapy, CDW, Connie's Pizza, IGS Energy, and Miller Lite. Here are your hosts, Jeff Joniak, a.k.a. the Mayor of Bearsville, and his sidekick, Tom the Surfmaster Thayer.
Happy Tuesday night, everybody. We continue to look back while looking ahead to what's next for the Chicago Bears. So much to be thankful for and so much to be hopeful for in the future of this franchise. We discussed tonight on Bears Weekly here on ESPN 1000 and the Bears Radio Network with Super Bowl winning Bears guard Tom Thayer. I'm Jeff Joniak. Former quarterback Jim Miller from SiriusXM NFL Radio will be checking in from the Senior Bowl down in Mobile, Alabama, as he deals with travel issues. He was at the AFC Championship game in Denver, just getting into Mobile this morning. I guess the travel time was a mess, but we'll get on top of that as well. Dan Barilli, Jordan Tredup, and Katie Fox, our producers, with in studio tonight help from Mario Herron. And our executive producer of the Bears Radio Network is Eric Ostrowski. First of all, Tom, how you feeling this evening? And your impression on the Bears and what they brought to the table now that you've seen the championship games.
I'm super encouraged what lies in the future, and I'm excited to see where this thing is going, considering what they've already accomplished. You know, the pressure really starts now because we have high expectations as Bears fans and Bears alumni and the season ticket holders and the stadium support, because the Bears were able to accomplish an incredible amount of success in Ben's first year. I don't think anybody just wants to let that fall by the wayside and, you know, not concentrate on what they can accomplish next year. The continuous development of one of the most dynamic quarterbacks in the league in Caleb, one of the most interesting and fun offenses to watch that's led by Ben Johnson. The fact that they have a defense that is innovative and has a lot of varieties to it. So all these parts of it, even the special teams, all the moving parts of what you need to have in order to have big picture success, the Bears have the beginnings of those.
It's time now to join our friend in Mobile, Alabama. He's travel weary, but he's so thrilled to be looking at the next crop of college prospects that'll be entering the NFL draft, just back from the AFC Championship game. Our former Bears quarterback from SiriusXM NFL Radio, moving the chains. Here's Jim Miller. You're smiling. That's good.
Yeah, I mean, this whole country is under this travel watch, and I got caught in it. But, yeah, good to be in Mobile, so it's going to be a fun week.
All right, what were your impressions? I just asked Tom impressions about the championship games and how it relates to the Bears. Because if home field advantage existed, for example, in the NFC Championship game and the conditions that we had over the weekend, 10 inches of snow, blowing, cold weather, would have leaned in their favor in that regard. It didn't seem too big for them in the playoffs. And they got through the first game, obviously, the dramatic win, battled the Rams to the bitter end. I mean, the Bears were in the Elite Eight, and how it stacks up to these Final Four that you saw.
Yeah, I think, well, you know, when I look at the Dennis Allen's defensive game plan against the Rams and just how obviously Seattle played, I thought Dennis Allen pitched a gem. I mean, you forced the Rams to punt 10 times. You know, I think you're doing something defensively, and that's without, you know, some key players that weren't in the lineup. I think it definitely benefited the Bears to have Kyler Gordon back, but you know, I just look at that game. I think Dennis Allen has really been what an asset. Because if you look at the Bears' numbers defensively, they're middle of the pack, actually in the mid-20s defensively. But I just think his ability to call the game. So don't underestimate the offensive coordinators, the defensive coordinators that have a vision of how a game's going to play out. And I think Dennis Allen was all over it. And I thought the Bears, they could have easily advanced. You know, the elements that they played in, I do think played in their favor, much like it did New England this weekend on the AFC side of things. But the Bears are going to be right there, in my opinion, next year.
Yeah, Tom, we forget about the 8 punts, officially, 8 punts forced by the Bears defense against that high-powered offense. Dennis Allen, I know you felt very strongly as well as I did about his performance over the course of the season. Use of personnel exhausted that defensive roster because of injuries. A lot of guys missed games. You talk about other teams in the league that missed time because of injury. The Bears missed a lot of time due to injury on the defense.
Yeah, but I think if you look at the start of the second half of the Green Bay game, when they completely shut down Josh Jacobs, 7 carries for 6 yards. And I think that gave you a little bit of incentive on what you could do against a good running game like the Rams had. And then you get C.J. Gardner back in the mix. You got Kyler Gordon in the second game. You got a variety of defensive skill players when you look at Nashawn, Jalen, and Tyreek. So all these variety of skill players that you can have on the back end of a defense that they can play at the second level as well as the third level. Like Jim said, I think Dennis Allen did an incredible job of limiting the success of that Rams offense.
Jim, with the conditions as they were for all these outdoor playoff games, I know there's been a talk about, hey, let's get a neutral site conference championship games to level the playing field, but I say please don't do that because these teams earn the right for home field advantage by way of the regular season, winning your division, et cetera, et cetera. Please don't take that away.
Yeah, I hope they don't take it away because, really the Lamar Hunt and the Clark Hunt family, they proposed that a long time ago, and quickly owners shot it down. Owners like Arthur Blank, other owners did as well. And Arthur Blank actually would have benefited from Atlanta, because Atlanta would be a huge neutral site because of the access to get into that city. I think it's something that you earn. I think your fan base enjoys it, obviously having that home game, but the NFL has bigger plans. They want those championship games to almost be like mini Super Bowls where you'd have a halftime show and all that. And obviously the broadcasting money for commercials would go up and the owners would benefit. But for the most part, I think traditional owners want that right to have that home game. That home game advantage is something you play for.
Tom, the Bears had a halftime show. Chase Rice was performing at Soldier Field at halftime of the divisional against the LA Rams. So
What about some of these communities, though, that come from a blue-collar surroundings where they don't have a bunch of money to shell out for a flight or a ticket to a neutral site? This is complete nonsense. This has been a reward that the NFL has had on the guys that are able to win the games or earn the right, over the course of years. You look at Minnesota back in the Bud Grant days when they went to 4 Super Bowls. Who in the heck's going into Minnesota
right.
and competing in there in those conditions?
Bloomington.
So they didn't win the Super Bowls, but they went to them. So that you got to stop that conversation right now.
Yeah, I recently saw in 1969, I think it was a championship game, Minnesota and Cleveland, and it just looked ridiculous. I mean, just utterly insane to play in those conditions in that outdoor stadium in Minneapolis.
Listen, we got the Ice Bowl in Green Bay, but we also had the NFC Championship game against the San Francisco 49ers in Chicago. And San Francisco beat us. Yep. So it's not a foregone conclusion that the home team is going to win if the weather's inclement. It's a great competitive scenario that you got to let see unfold in front of you.
There were only 2 teams that made the playoffs that were essentially indoor teams. Look at the teams in the Super Bowl. Seattle, that's an outdoor team. New England, that's an outdoor team with outdoor stadiums that have played in the elements all season long.
All right, we'll take a look back at Tom's Super Bowl experience in 1985. This week, 40 years later, when we come back, this is Bears Weekly on ESPN 1000 of the Bears Radio Network.
Welcome back to Bears Weekly on the Bears Radio Network. Here's your host, the voice of the Bears, Jeff Joniak.
This segment of Bears Weekly is brought to you by IGS Energy. I'm laughing because Tom Thayer is, we're looking at him because we're on Zoom. We're doing this call with Jim. He's got a hood on. I got a Bears stocking cap on. Jim's got a stock. It's like we're all indoors, but we're freezing here in Chicago, and it's cold down in Mobile, right, Jim?
It is cold. It was cold in Denver. We had a layover in Houston. It was cold in Houston. It's cold here in Mobile. It's crazy.
All right, 40 years ago yesterday, Tom. 40 years ago yesterday, you took your most important cab ride of your life. I believe it was in the morning for a Super Bowl game, late afternoon, early evening, Super Bowl 20. To think how much it's grown 40 years later, that you would be a Super Bowl winner in one of the first 20 Super Bowls in NFL history. And memories about that. Explain the cab ride. I know you've told the story many times for those who've never heard it. You're a unique human being. You're a creature of habit, and you haven't changed a bit.
Well, so when we went to the Bears Indianapolis Super Bowl, we got there so early in the morning because we had to do Bears Game Day Live. And when you get to the stadium, they kind of have a mile perimeter on the outside of the stadium blocked off. So we get out in a cab, we go through one security, maybe 3/4 of a mile away from the stadium, and then we walk to where our camera is set up. And so that's a vision of what's taken place in the last, 20 years of the Super Bowl. The morning of our Super Bowl, it was a 5:30 kickoff. I take a cab to the stadium at 9:30 in the morning, and I go there by myself, and I have on shorts, flip-flops, and a T-shirt. And the cab pulls up right to the back door of the Superdome. There is no perimeter set up. There is no barricades. There is no security protection. I get out of the cab. I go into the back door of the stadium, and I walk across. The lights aren't on yet in the Superdome. And so I walk in, and Jim, how the locker room is at one end of the stadium, but I walked in the opposite end. And so I walked the length of the field, and I'm just thinking, wow, this is going to be incredible. And so then I go into the Bears locker room. Now I'm in there for basically the rest of the day until I'm going to come out and take a couple warm-up laps. And it's like when the house fell on the Wicked Witch in the Wizard of Oz. Because when I came back out of the locker room, the lights in the show was all getting underway. And so for the way I went into the stadium to going out for warm-ups and then going through the game, it was just kind of a change of scenery unlike any others in a football player's life.
Jim, 2004 for you with the Patriots, what was it like? What'd you do? You remember the whole day?
Yeah, it was down in Jacksonville. And yeah, I remember, busing to the stadium, and, it's something you do, you take in. But as Tom said, the closer you get to the stadium, you're getting a police escort, right? So that changed from back in the day. And obviously you go through all these barricades, and you pull up, and, it's just it's an event. And even from that Super Bowl, like I've had the opportunity to play with the Steelers in Super Bowl 30, that's kind of when it started to take off, because Kevin Green, if you remember, Hall of Famer, he did the WWE. So you started to participate and do different things. So it kind of has grown. And then Super Bowl 39, it was even bigger in Jacksonville. And I think now here we are at 60, and this thing is out of control. And you don't think it can get any bigger, but it gets bigger for all the reasons that Tom said. The hoopla, you got all these celebrities that are involved, you got all these parties that are involved, the commercials, and it's a week of events. It really is, leading up to the big game.
All right, so put your X's and O's caps on. Let's pretend, just for kicks, okay? Mm-hmm. It's the 1985 Bears against the Patriots of 2026 in the Super Bowl. Let's just pretend. A repeat of New England, Chicago. Tom, your dominant running game, your dominant defense against Mike Vrabel and the Patriots with a rookie quarterback, Drake May, instead of Tony Eason at quarterback. Break it down, and I want Jim's perspective, too. Just put your X's and O's caps on.
Well, I still think it would be Vrabel wanting to take Walter Payton out of the game. That would be their first line of defense. And then who else can beat us outside of Walter Payton? And like that day, Matt Suhey had a huge game. Willie Gauld had a huge game. Emery Moorhead had some big catches. Kenny Marjoram had some big catches. So all of those guys were able to have a big part in the overall numbers of the offensive performance. And then McMahon, when we got down to the goal line, they gave he had a couple quarterback sneaks, and then William Perry caught the ball or ran the ball in for touchdown. That was the first game that William Perry was supposed to throw a touchdown to Emery Moorhead, but they covered him, so he kept the ball. And to me, whenever you face that era of the Chicago Bears, it's going to be the sole intentions of the defensive coaches to take Walter Payton out of it to see who else can beat you. And I remember the first play of the second half, Jim McMahon walked into the huddle and he goes, "Hey, you guys, you show me a good play action fake, and this is going to be a huge play." And so it was a play action pass from behind center. The offensive line sold the play, and Willie Galt connected for a 63-yard pass, and it should have been a touchdown, but it was underthrown a little bit. So all the things kind of, had a hand in the operation. The most disappointing thing about it is that Walter didn't go out on top and have a game of a lifetime.
I think the Bears would dominate this modern-day New England Patriots team. The reason why I say that, because like Tom said, that 46 defense, let's just talk about the rookie left tackle, Will Campbell, against that group up front that Tom was with in Chicago. And I don't think the Bears receivers, even with Stephon Diggs, I think that secondary would hold up pretty good man-to-man. And so I think the Bears would definitely win that matchup. It'd be old school, and I don't think the Patriots would be ready for that. I really don't. I think Bears would dominate it.
So Seattle and the Patriots in Super Bowl 60 in San Francisco. Jim, what are your early thoughts on that matchup?
Right now, I think the more talented team is you're going to say Seattle, but I just think Mike Vrabel has a unique way to get his team, much like Bill Belichick, to play to the style to minimize the strengths of what Seattle is doing right now. What I am worried about is I do think Drake May has a shoulder injury. Everybody has talked about it right now, and that's another reason why, not only because of the weather, they didn't throw the ball a lot the second half versus Denver, and he was errant with some throws. But right now, I think the more talented team is Seattle, and Sam Darnold is playing at a high level right now. This guy is not the quarterback that was with the Jets. Look at what he did with Minnesota. Look what he's doing right now with Seattle. This guy's a difference maker, and he's like Teflon. He is mentally tough now. I like Seattle so far.
Tom?
I like 14-7 Seattle. And again, I think it's going to be a defensive game. And I think because of the neutral site, you're not going to have an overwhelming performance by the Seattle defense because they make the offense so dysfunctional when they play at home. But they are a good defense. And so when Jim says that he has shoulder concerns about Drake May, I still have concerns about Sam Darnold and the way Vrabel and his defensive staff will attack him. And maybe Will Campbell, the left tackle, if he exposes a little bit of vulnerability from that side. I don't think it's a high-scoring game, so I'm going to go with a 14-7 score.
All right, when we come back, we'll look inside the division and the changes that are coming. This is Bears Weekly on ESPN 1000 of the Bears Radio Network.
Bears.
It is gone!
Bears Weekly.
Time expires!
A deep dive into all things Bears.
And the Bears win!
With Jeff Joniak and Tom Thayer, this is the home of the Bears, ESPN Chicago.
This segment of Bears Weekly is brought to you by Athletico Physical Therapy. Visit athletico.com to request an in-clinic or virtual appointment and start feeling better tomorrow. With Tom Thayer, Jim Miller from SiriusXM NFL Radio, moving the chains down in Mobile, Alabama. First practice of the week for the college crop. Jim, down there, Drew Fabianich is the new executive director. He's done a really good job of bringing in a bunch of talent. Overall here, defensive line and offensive line are going to be the headliners once again this year.
Yeah, I think they've got really good group of defense up front. You got a lot of good edge rushers, is deep. The interior is deep. O-line is always good here at the Senior Bowl. And then, it's going to be a select group of quarterbacks. Probably the best quarterback that I think is going to be down here is Nussmeier. And if you remember, Doug Nussmeier spent a little time with the Bears, and he's the offensive coordinator of the New Orleans Saints. So I think Nussmeier is the quarterback I'm going to focus in a lot. But the trenches are always good, especially the edge rushers this year.
All right, let's look into the division now because changes are afoot. Let's start with the Green Bay Packers. They lose defensive coordinator Jeff Hafley. He becomes the head coach down in Miami, and former Arizona Cardinals head coach Jonathan Gannon, after 3 years out, is the head coach, former Philadelphia defensive coordinator. He is now the defensive coordinator. Tom, known for building his defense around his talent, what he has, and adapt, and who knows what it'll look like, but what do you think of that? And we'll get Jim's thoughts as well.
I guess you got to figure, when does Micah Parsons become a part of your ability to game plan specifically for the talent that you have? Because he changes everything. He changes the direction of your rush. He changes how your cornerbacks play behind him. And so I guess when you have to formulate a plan without your biggest star at the beginning of the season, we'll see how that goes. I'm kind of confused about this choice as the defensive coordinator, because I'm not so sure, what his style of defense is going to be within this division, where he comes from, and the talent that Green Bay has. And I think this is more of a wait and see scenario, but a lot of coordinators, or a lot of the offensive coordinators within this division, will try to figure out him as quickly as possible, but he's not going to show you anything until the regular season gets here.
I'm with you, Jeff. This is kind of confusing because Jeff Hafley, when he came in, they went to a 4-3. He believes in just bringing 4, and that's why they went out and traded for Parsons. Gannon has been in a 3-4, typically, is what he's running. He's been a heavy dose blitzer, is what he's been. So I doubt that they go to a 3-4 for Green Bay. I still think it's going to be a 4-3, but I think it's going to be more heavy blitz, is what I see. It's going to be interesting in how it shakes out, because typically Green Bay wants to play with the lead and unleash their edge rushers, but I think really Coach LaFleur has decided, because the NFC has scored so many points, he is going to be more aggressive, like Brian Flores, who is one of the highest blitzing defensive coordinators in the NFL for Minnesota. So I think they're going to be more of a 4-3 blitzing team, is what I anticipate Green Bay is going to be this year.
So Minnesota appears to be keeping Brian Flores. Jim, I know they extended him, but is he completely out of the running for whatever's available out there right now?
Yeah, I do. I think with that lawsuit that's still looming in the background against the NFL, he's going to get his opportunities in the future. But I think they want, at least from an owner side of it and the NFL side of it, I think they want it settled, and I think Brian Flores does too. He's happy with where he's at and what he's done in Minnesota, and I know Kevin O'Connell is ecstatic that he stayed.
Hey, Tom, what do you take out of Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, the GM of the Vikings, saying that they're going to make that quarterback room deep and talented as possible? What is that, a statement on J.J. McCarthy, or is that just the obvious, you need to have as many quarterbacks as possible because of injury?
I don't think they've lost any faith in J.J. McCarthy, but he showed a lack of durability. And that's the key ingredient here. And because we saw how it affected the Denver Broncos this past week, we heard so much conversation how, Peyton went out there and set his sights on Stidham to bring him in here. First player he signed as a new coach. And we see how that worked out. You have to have a legitimate guy waiting in the wing so your offense doesn't skip a beat if he has to play. And J.J. McCarthy really hasn't had that continuous heartbeat yet. We don't know what he's all about. He has shown signs that he can go out there and beat good teams at home and on the road, but it's about being there week in and week out, having a stretch of a couple years where you're, answering the bell week in and week out. So I don't, Kevin O'Connell, he's a really good football coach. And I think he's realized the importance of having a legitimate backup in there when you have a quarterback that hasn't shown that he can be durable for the big picture.
Yeah, it's an incomplete assessment right now on J.J. McCarthy. I think they think he's talented. They got to develop him. Let's be honest, the guy doesn't even have 20 starts right now. I mean, Caleb Williams has more starts than J.J. McCarthy. He's in the lineup. He's out of the lineup. He's had some good. He's had some bad. So really, it's a small sample size that's incomplete. And as Tom said, it's been riddled with injuries. So you got to prepare your team for all those scenarios.
All right, Detroit's offense will not be called by Dan Campbell this year. Drew Petzing, the offensive coordinator formerly with Arizona. His teams ran the ball well in Arizona, top 10 rushing offense from 23 to 25. And then the addition of Mike Kafka, the Northwestern product, local kid, former Giants offensive coordinator, interim head coach, now a top offensive assistant, a title we don't know yet. Jim, what does that do to the Detroit offense? Is this a lean into that running attack?
Look at how that offense performed once Jacoby Brissett went in there. As a midline thrower, he ran the offense that Drew Petzing envisioned. And Penstein has the background with Kevin Stefanski. They're in Cleveland. It is a run base that you mentioned, Jeff, and everything will be based off that. So it goes along with Jared Goff. He's a run, play action, midline quarterback. But that's what Jacoby Brissett is. And look how well that offense performs. So that is a really good hire, in my opinion, by the Detroit Lions.
The one thing about that change is that you're going to have to completely morph from an offense you built around Kyler Murray to the exact opposite quarterback in Jared Goff. You're talking about a slower, longer quarterback that has incredible arm talent as compared to an elusive, shorter, smaller type of quarterback that you're going to run that offense with. So it's a good thing that it's only one person teaching one person, and that, I mean, the coordinator itself, in whatever he puts in, installs in Detroit will be to the rest of the team.
And a good friend of Bears head coach Ben Johnson. He was in his wedding party, apparently, Drew Petzing. So the family stays in the division. This is going to be an interesting division again in 2026 and beyond. All right, one more segment with Jim before we cut him free. This is Bears Weekly on ESPN 1000 of the Bears Radio Network.
Bears Weekly is back, and so are Tom Thayer and Jeff Joniak on ESPN Chicago.
This segment of Bears Weekly is brought to you by IGS Energy with Tom Thayer. Jim Miller from SiriusXM NFL Radio. He's down in Mobile, Alabama to watch practice this afternoon and get a real handle on the first part of the draft experience. And the Shrine Bowl's tonight, Jim, too, and they've got a bunch of nice players, but so many drafted players come out of the Senior Bowl, a large number from last year, years in the past. There'll be some first-rounders out of this group. Maybe not as many as last year, but you never know because guys come out of nowhere like Gray Zabel did a year ago.
Yeah, North Dakota State, he ends up getting first-round pick by the Seattle Seahawks playing in a Super Bowl. And I agree with you. 90% of the players that are here are going to get drafted in the NFL. And every team last year drafted a player from the Senior Bowl. So it's coveted by all 32 teams. They'll have their scouts down here. They'll have their general managers down here evaluating the talent. But you look at some of the teams that have hit on their draft picks. Like, look at Seattle. From Gray Zabel to Emanwore, the safety, they're getting huge contributions from third-rounders, from fourth-rounders, even from fifth-rounders down here in Mobile. And teams have tapped into it, and they've hit on these picks. Well, look at Houston. Houston picked two guys that were in the game, Jalen Noel, the receiver, and Higgins. So and teams are going back-to-back rounds doing it because typically it's a more proven commodity where they get a better look at guys and they feel confident with what this game brings in terms of resumes and how guys show out.
All right, so before we go any further, I want to drop in from our Bears Etc. podcast that will drop tomorrow on the Bears platforms. We had our sideline reporter from ESPN 1000 and the Bears Radio Network, Jason McKee, the former Bears fullback who was a part of the Super Bowl experience in 2006 for the Bears, and I asked a question for both he and Tom about what it's like when you do not get to the big game despite making the playoffs. In 2005, it was a one and done. In 2006, they went to the Super Bowl. The Bears did not have a one and done. They got into a second bite of the apple in the playoffs, and what that might mean in terms of intestinal fortitude and the desire to build on what you started.
I think the leadership that we had in our locker room, and I'll start there because that's where it matters most, right? The head coach sets the standard and the culture, but the players got to uphold it on a daily basis. And I think when you have guys, the leaders we had like Olin Kreutz, Ruben Brown, Mike Brown, Thomas Jones, I mean, the list goes on and on. We had so many leaders in that locker room, but not just leaders because they were vocal. Guys that did things the right way and led by example, like Brian Urlacher, wasn't necessarily a vocal guy, but was always doing the right thing, obviously making plays. And we knew we were going to be really good. And those leaders, like when minicamp started, all throughout training camp, we had our mantra, which was Space Mountain. And Space Mountain was reaching the Super Bowl. And we just knew that we were a good enough team and we were going to do whatever it took to get there. We had an ultimate confidence and a chip on our shoulder from the previous year going into that season.
Who came up with Space Mountain? How does that even come up?
Yeah, Ruben Brown. Ruben Brown's going to come up with something. I mean, the ultimate veteran, a great leader, borderline crazy, which is a good thing, a good mix. So yeah, he came up with that, and I can recall us having shirts, and on the front of our shirts it said "Pimp Strong." Olin Cruz came up with that, and then on the back it said "Space Mountain." So they were black shirts, and we wore those, during lifting, throughout training camp, and every huddle, or not huddle, but every time we brought it up as a team, we broke it down with the mantra of Space Mountain.
So everybody has a different experience. We didn't hear Tom's in there, but Tom can reflect also on what it was like, because you came in '84 to the Bears after their near arrival in the Super Bowl in '84. That engine was starting to run, and you just happened to hop on that train to keep it going. What'd you feel? What was your experience?
First of all, my experience is I came from a Bears fan, and I followed the Bears, and I was closely associated to those guys since the moment I got drafted by him 4 years before that. And everything I was doing in the USFL, even conversations with George Allen, was to get me prepared to go and be a competitor day one of being a part of the Bears. But the conversation of the Super Bowl was from the very start of training camp. And I don't think anybody ever avoided the conversation, the importance of preparation, and just the importance of going to work every single day. Ditka never took it easy on anybody because they went to the deep into the playoffs the year before. It was more of a amplification of the importance of the early season preparation to make sure they got the win. So I think it's more important to be a part of the conversation if you truly believe it than try to avoid the topic and approach it when it comes into reality.
Jim, your experience with the Bears in '01 was very different, because you knew this team was going to be a playoff team before the offseason even finished, believe it or not. And that team went on to win the division, go 13-3, but unfortunately lost to the Eagles in the divisional round when Hugh Douglas introduced himself to you, unfortunately. What was the attitude in that building, and did you think this was start of something special?
Well, yeah. Well, the organization had gone in a different direction. They had hired a general manager, which they really didn't have at that point. Jerry Angelo was brought in, and obviously Dick Duran was an existing coach. So there was kind of a new structure being put in place there in terms of leadership and how the organization was going to be run. And I think since then, obviously it's gone in that direction where they've had a general manager, and obviously has gone through hiring coaches. And then even this previous regime, Ryan Poles in place and he hires a new GM. That was not the case when Dick Duran showed up. There was no general manager that hired him. So I think structurally, that's when the organization kind of stabilized itself and had a power structure that was in succession in terms of the hierarchy and how it was going to be run.
And Jim, as you look ahead here, the schedule for the Bears this year coming up, they'll have home games against New England, the Jets, New Orleans, and Jacksonville. 4 teams with new coaches here in 2025. And then 3 teams on the road with new coaches this year. Joe Brady named head coach of Buffalo today. Miami, obviously, with Jeff Hafley, and the hire of Atlanta's Kevin Stefanski. So it's amazing that in the last couple of years how many changes there have been. And since 22, that 22 class also had 10 head coaches hired. Only 2 remain.
Yeah, it's interesting that a third of the league, 10 head coaches, and some of these are very decorated. When you look at John Harbaugh, and obviously Mike Tomlin elects to step down. But, guys like Jeff Hafley, typically the trend has been hire young, new up-and-coming coaches. But I do think you're going to see in place now that older coaches like Mike Vrabel, who had a first bite at the apple, gets a second opportunity. Jim Schwartz potentially maybe getting a second opportunity there in Cleveland. And then, of course, you look at Mike McCarthy, who is very decorated in his coaching career, and the Steelers have gone in a different direction. So there's a good mix in there. But Hafley is going to be interesting because Miami's a team, much like I just brought up about the Bears, they're going in a new way organizationally and how they're going to structure things. So it's going to be interesting in how it all plays out.
All right, Jim, we're going to let you go. Appreciate it. I know you're under a tight schedule. We'll talk to you at the Senior Bowl, buddy.
All right, thank you.
I got to mention this, too, about Caleb Williams, if you're just joining us. Earlier last week, he was named the 2026 NFLPA Alan Page Community Award finalist. He was the Week 11 Community MVP, hosted 40 members of his youth football team, Caleb Williams Elite. I don't know if you knew he had a team. But for a weekend in Chicago through his Caleb Cares Foundation, that's just part of what he brings to the table, a complete teammate, both in the building, outside the building, and involving himself in the community here in Chicago.
Yeah, and I know he realizes how important that is, because he is going to touch somebody in that group that it's going to change their life. And maybe you don't see it within the next 3 years, but in the next 30 years, you may see enormous benefits from it. I'm super proud of all the Chicago Bears that go out there and they extend the gratitude of themselves, what they're able to accomplish, and what they want to give back. So congratulations to Caleb, but also congratulations to every Chicago Bear that goes out there and has a foundation and extends the good fortunes that they're experiencing right now.
All right, Tom, one more segment to go. Tom's thoughts coming up to close out the show here on Bears Weekly on ESPN 1000 of the Bears Radio Network.
Welcome back to Bears Weekly, a Chicago Bears production on the flagship home of the Bears, ESPN Chicago.
This segment of Bears Weekly is brought to you by Athletico Physical Therapy. Visit athletico.com to request an in-clinic or virtual appointment and start feeling better tomorrow with Tom Thayer, Jeff Joniak. Time for Tom's thoughts. I think you should go if you have a chance. What are you trying to tell me, Tom? What are you suggesting?
I think, and it's really important, because the Bears, they're a young football team. They're a young coaching staff. They've had the opportunity to see what it means for this football team, this organization, to bring success into the city. But I want them, if they have the opportunity, to go see the big picture of success. If you're a young guy, if you're a young player, go to the Super Bowl. If you have a chance to go to a Super Bowl party, go to the Super Bowl party. Kind of let all that sink in. And what you were able to accomplish, but what is yet left out there to accomplish. And I've done it before. I've been to the Super Bowl since I've been a player. And I think if you haven't experienced it, just to go, you talk about the bite of the apple, the feel of it, what it does to you. I think these guys, they should go there and experience what these two teams are enjoying in their football lives.
Well, interesting. So if you're a player of significance, you have a marketing angle to your career, and you're often pitching products at the Super Bowl. So there may be some guys that go from the Bears anyway out to Santa Clara. I know every player gets the option to buy Super Bowl tickets, and so a lot of those are resold to friends or family or whatever. But it flies in the face, Tom. I'm interesting to hear that you said that, because a lot of players I've heard from, they don't even watch the Super Bowl. They don't want to be at the Super Bowl until they actually are playing in the Super Bowl. It's really interesting. I find it a lot of different conversation on that very topic.
Well, let me tell you a story, because it was one of the greatest experiences of my life. When the San Diego Chargers and the Pittsburgh Steelers played in the Super Bowl, it was in Arizona. So I went out there the night before the game. We had two teams of flag football. Everybody that has been in a Super Bowl and won a Super Bowl. We had two teams, and we went on the field and we played a flag football game. I'm playing against Dave Casper. I'm playing against Mike Webster. I'm seeing Randy White. I'm seeing all these guys, Jeff, that I grew up admiring beyond belief. And here I am on the same field with them, and I'm playing football, and I'm playing center, and centers can go out and catch passes.
Did you catch one? Did you get a target?
I caught one that made Dave Casper so mad that he never let me off the line of scrimmage again. So I'm just saying, the thrill of some of those instances in your life are, unforgettable.
I never heard that story. I always feel you always got something you haven't revealed. That is a interesting, especially in light of what flag football is becoming and what it's become.
It was just,
yeah,
the superstars that were there. It was just, I could have sat there with the ink pad and just got autographs the whole night, but I was in shape and ready to play, and I had a blast.
I covered that Super Bowl, actually. I covered that. Stan Humphries, right?
Yeah.
He was quarterback of the Chargers. Yeah, that was a fun experience there in Arizona. All right. I think you have time to start to smell. What are you talking about?
Okay. So one of the best times in a professional football player's life is probably the first month after the season ends. And our great friend and the guy we have more respect for than anybody else in the world, Clyde Emmerich. He always said it takes you 2 days to get out of shape and 2 weeks to get in shape. So the thing is, I'm encouraging you is don't ever let yourself get so grossly out of shape. It's almost unrecoverable by the time things get underway. And so this is what I'm saying. So when I was playing for the Bears, Jim McMahon had a racquetball court in his house and he had a weight room. And so just the smell of that fun training, the smell of a racquetball court, the smell of a weight room, a pickleball court, a yoga room, Pilates, all these types of things that it's not necessarily going in there and trying to bench 500. It's going in there to have a fun workout, to go to a health club just to socialize with the other people that go in there. So rather than letting it get away from you, get back in touch with it now. Have fun. Go through the smells of conditioning and enjoy it.
I think that's good advice for the broadcast crew, too.
It's advice for life. But in terms of a football player, that's why I always went to Hawaii immediately following the season, because I got right back into activities. It wasn't football, but I was active, and it helped me.
How long did you take before you started lifting again after a season?
1 week.
1 week, okay. And did you lift much during the season?
Yes. Heavy. We had the same heavy type of days that you had because it gave you that self-confidence that you had to keep your strength up. So, I went into a weight room in New Orleans 4 days before the Super Bowl, and I benched 540, 535.
That was what you needed. That was you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes. Well, no. Each of them have something to think about.
Let's do that over.
So
3-2.
maybe I typed it wrong.
Let me start over.
Okay.
3, 2, 1. All right, your last one, Tom. Each player, give them something to think about. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes. Okay, but I'm talking about 4 players here. I'm talking about Joniak Walker, Shamar Turner, Luke Newman, and Tyreek Stevenson. So each one of these guys, Jeff, Joniak Walker, I think he has the chance to come onto this football team next year and compete as a starter. What position, receiver position, even though you have to know them all, does he fit in best to be the most competitive? I think he's showed that he's got the skill. He's got the playmaking ability. Now you got to figure out what's best for him in this offense. Number 2, Shamar Turner. I saw him play defensive end. I think he's built for a 3-technique defensive tackle. You got to let him know before the season starts, because he's the type of guy that needs to go through body construction. He's listed at 6'3", 292. If he's a defensive end, he's probably got to lose a little bit of weight. If he's playing the defensive tackle position, he's got to maintain that 300 level. But I think Shamar Turner is an interesting candidate because if you look at the defensive line and where they need help the most, he's got the skill set for both positions. But you got to tell him beforehand. Number 3, Luke Newman. Here's my guy. Listen, I like what McFadden went in and did in the last game at left guard. But if I find myself in an emergency scenario at the left tackle position and I have to get Joe Tooney to get me through a season or a half a season, I need Luke Newman to come back in here and be a competitive starter. And I'm not saying he's going to take McFadden's job, but I need him to be a starter's level, because that's what I need to count on Luke Newman to be from this point on. And so he's my guy.
Yeah, and they were trying to see how he'd be as a center also. They were training him to be a center.
Yeah, and then my last guy, Tyreek Stevenson. And so I have a void at the safety position, and it's all 4 guys. I believe, and I believed it since he's been here, he's the most physical tackler of all the defensive backs. I would love to see experiments of Tyreek Stevenson at the safety position. And I want to see if his skills, his athleticism is transferable, because it's happened before to other defensive backs over the history of the NFL. So he's one of my candidates. I want to see if that is movable.
That's why they're Tom's Thoughts. Our big hit, Tom's thoughts, our last segment here on Bears Weekly. That's going to wrap us up. Thank you, Tom. The executive producer of the Bears Radio Network is Eric Ostrowski. Thanks to Mario Heron in the ESPN studios. Our Bears producers, Dan Barilli, Jordan Trudup, and Katie Fox. For Tom Thayer and Jim Miller, I'm Jeff Joniak. This has been Bears Weekly on the radio home of the Chicago Bears, ESPN Chicago. Coming up next, Amber and Ian. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the Chicago Bears Network presentation of Bears Weekly, hosted by the mayor of Bearsville, Jeff Joniak, and Surfmaster Tom Thayer. Podcasts are available on the Chicago Bears official app, brought to you by Verizon and Apple Podcasts. Bears Weekly has been brought to you by Miller Lite.